It's the Sound of Ideas Reporters Roundtable from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Mike McIntyre. Thank you so much for joining us. We've been talking about Burke Lakefront Airport for decades in this town. Is it a luxury that distinguishes Cleveland by having an airport right downtown? Or is it a terrible waste of prime shoreline property? Mayor Justin Bibb votes for the latter. The city is ramping up its efforts to close Burke, and the public has several ways to weigh in. Senate Bill 1, the anti-DEI law governing college campuses, will get a new law enforcement mechanism if a new law is passed. It would dock colleges and universities' state instruction funding if they aren't in full compliance with the law. Potholes are everywhere. I slammed into one on I-90, had to get a new tire. So what can you do besides drive like you're a slalom skier? And what can Public Works do to keep up? Akron may have an answer with a pothole-filling truck that requires just one employee to operate. And let the debates begin as 17 nominees are announced for possible induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You may be pulling for Luther Vandross or Melissa Etheridge. And yeah, they're great. But I'm all in for InXS. Joining me today to discuss these stories and a whole lot more news from this busy week, from IdeaStream Public Media, Akron-Canton reporter Anna Huntsman and Deputy Editor of News Glenn Forbes. Good to see both of you.
Good morning,
Good to
Mike.
be here.
Good morning. And in Columbus, a woman who will not unflick her Bic until Iron Maiden, which also happens to be her nickname, is inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. State House News Bureau Chief Karen Kassler. Hey, Karen.
I love it. I'm with you, though, on NXS, so
good.
let's just make that clear.
All right, good. We have two now of the same generation. All right, you can join us by sending email to soi@ideastream.org, and let's get ready to roundtable. The City of Cleveland and the North Coast Waterfront Development Corporation this week opened an online survey to get public input on how to use Burke Lakefront Airport's acreage if the airport is decommissioned. Planners have said that they're open to ideas for how to use the 450 acres of prime real estate, all ideas. But closing the airport, which Mayor Justin Bibb is pushing for, is not a done deal. City Council is holding committee hearings, and it needs to agree, and the feds have to sign off. And we're going to discuss all of that on Wednesday, March 4th, that's this coming Wednesday, when the Sound of Ideas community tour heads to the terminal at Burke Lakefront Airport for what we're sure will be a spirited conversation. Waitlist tickets are available at ideastream.org/community tour. So Glenn, let's talk about the survey. What kind of feedback is the city and the North Coast Waterfront Development Corporation looking for?
Yeah, and I'll talk plenty about the survey, but first, can I answer your question with a question?
Yes.
Is this finally happening? Is this going to happen in the city of Cleveland?
With Burke?
With Burke.
Well, you're right. It has been talked about for decades. And what we've had in the past is a mayor in Frank Jackson who said, well, we're not talking about that right now.
Right.
It's not an issue. Mayor Bibb on his campaign said it is an issue. He's now at the beginning of his second term and says, I want this done by the end of my term. The question is, you're right, will it happen? Well, there certainly is a lot more will now.
I was just going to say.
People are moving toward it. We've got, when we put up the invitation for the community tour next week, immediately had 200 people register to show up, and that's more than we can seat. We have a wait list now. So yes, at least the talk is going to happen.
It seems more of a possibility, right? So this survey is pretty interesting, and I think the most interesting part of it is actually the first question, because they ask, do you consider Cleveland a waterfront city, right? Like, they're just trying to get that definition, get as many people to answer that question as they can.
Right.
And I was thinking about it, and it's like, if you don't consider it a waterfront city, there's plenty of water there, right? If you don't consider it a waterfront city, isn't that somewhat of an indictment on administrations past or developers past or whatever?
Or planners.
You're talking about more than 19 miles of lakefront, right? And the other thing that they say in this survey is that less than 3 miles of those are actually public access.
Right. When you look at it, you've got a sewage treatment plant, a water treatment plant, sewage treatment plant. You have the stadium currently that's on that place. You have docks and the port usage. You have the airport. So you look at a lot of these, and then private ownership. So yeah, the question is, how do you get the public to the shore?
If you go to the North Coast Waterfront Development Corporation website and you take the survey, it's relatively short, takes you about 5 minutes. It does have some of that information in it. It also asks if there are any concerns about closing the airport. So it's not just what do you want to see there, it's do you have concerns about closing the airport itself. I thought some of the options that they put forth in terms of alternate uses were interesting, including a golf course. I mean, Mike, you and I could be playing on the shores of Lake Erie, where the air show used to be. So they put a golf course on there, urban farm, outdoor movie theater, which I think we're going to get into this a little later, but the idea of an outdoor movie theater, you could use it 5-6 months out of the year. So that was interesting. Gardens, of course, we've heard about, public access trails, green space. So the survey, for as brief as it is, and again, if you go to take that survey, it won't take you very long. It has a lot of interesting ideas in there and some information. Like I said, almost 19 miles of lakefront, but only less than 3 miles are public access at this point.
Glenn, if I saw a movie outside in February, I'd actually stay awake throughout a movie.
That's a good point. These 3-hour movies that keep coming out, I
Exactly.
would go see one there. That's such a good point.
A lot of ideas, and they're looking for more. And we'll ask the public now, too, if you're listening, if you have some ideas of what should happen with that 450 acres, let us know. Daryl sends a note, and he says, Burke is isolated from the city by the shoreway. How Burke is redeveloped might just depend on what happens to the shoreway. Is there a plan to lower or bridge it, or does it remain as is? It isn't as is, Daryl. There is a plan for the shoreway to make it a boulevard, something that's not a highway that runs through it, but one that has stops and crossings and those types of things. So yes, it would be connected in some way. And of course, there is the land bridge that's coming from downtown, right, Glenn? It goes more toward North Coast Harbor, but you'd get there and be able to go over to Burke.
And in years past, they'd said the land bridge is going to happen whether or not the stadium is there. It seems like the stadium will not be there, but the land bridge will be. So that's interesting. The survey is open for another 3 to 4 weeks. We've been trying to get in contact with the Development Corporation to see what the response rate has been, how many people have responded, and if they've kind of calculated the nature of the responses. We haven't heard back quite yet. But again, it is open for another 3 to 4 weeks. It won't take you very long, like I said, but there's a fair amount of information in there and a lot of different options to make your preference known as far as what happens with that land. Or again, as I said, keeping it as an airport.
Right, and you mentioned that. It could still be an airport, and that conversation we're going to have next week is going to be a full conversation. First of all, public members of the public who are coming are welcome to make comments and ask questions. We're also having a guest, a pilot there, who says, listen, we should have an airport there. And there's a number of city council members who have said this is a unique asset for a downtown. So it's not a settled deal. It'll be a conversation. Again, that conversation is March 4th, 6 o'clock in the evening at Burke. You can register on the wait list at this point by going to ideastream.org/community tour. And we're going to air that conversation on the Sound of Ideas on March 9th, Monday, March 9th. So in the morning at 9 o'clock and in the evening at 9 o'clock as well, trying to do our part to foster that conversation. A Republican lawmaker has introduced a bill that would punish colleges and universities that don't comply with Senate Bill 1 by withholding their state money. SB 1 went into effect last June to remove what supporters say is liberal bias on campus. Among the law's many provisions is a ban on most diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. The law is touted as an accountability measure to assure that schools are actually complying and not just checking the box. And Karen, let's talk about that. What's the reasoning behind those who have proposed this bill? There are others that say it's not necessary. You've already passed a law and it's nascent, and we're going to see how people comply. But they seem to have a suspicion that it's being complied with in word and maybe not in deed.
Well, there's only one person that appears to be behind this bill. It's Representative Tom Young, who was a sponsor of a companion bill to Senate Bill 1 in the House. So he believes very strongly in the provisions of Senate Bill 1, which, like you said, anti-DEI. It bans most mandatory DEI programs at state colleges and universities, bans faculty strikes, requires what's termed as intellectual diversity in classrooms on specific subjects. So it's really... Its sponsor said it was designed to push back on what they called liberal indoctrination on college campuses. So this bill that Tom Young has sponsored, this Senate Bill 1 Compliance Act, would just ensure that colleges and universities, the public ones, are doing that. And if they aren't, then their funding from the state could be withheld for the entire fiscal year. So even if they come into compliance later, their funding could still be held. And so obviously colleges and universities are very concerned about how do you determine compliance? What about the fact that Senate Bill 1 basically just went into effect in the last 6 months or so? So, some universities are still adapting to it. So there's a lot of concern about it.
And who determines what compliance is? If you say, hey, we've got somebody that used to run our diversity office and they're now running a student life office, and someone says, wait a minute, I think they're kind of doing the same job, who makes that decision?
Well, it looks like it's the chancellor of higher education, but that's a really good question. What are the metrics of that? And why is it okay or not okay to reassign employees? I mean, you have the American Association of University Professors saying you can't just recategorize employees like the bill suggests you can, that there are different rules here. And they claim that the bill's actually targeting certain employees, for instance, those who are working in DEI programs and offices. But Representative Young says that's not what they're trying to do. They're trying to make sure, as you said in the intro, that some universities aren't just checking the box and saying that they're going along with this, but in reality, they're not going along. Because there have been these reports that he says he's heard. He's met with some university professors and students who say that, this whole idea of complying with Senate Bill 1 is just being done on the surface, that there are some of these programs that are still operating.
So you said that this is one man that's behind it, Tom Young, but there's another man, the one who pushed for Senate Bill 1, Jerry Serino of Kirtland. What does he think about the need for what Young calls this compliance legislation?
Well, you might think that Senator Serino would be on board since, of course, like you said, he did sponsor Senate Bill 1. But he says right now there's no need for this because it's really a new law and universities are doing a good job, which Young also admitted that university professors are doing a good job in complying. And Serino said right now this is not needed. He trusts the process, so to speak. But Speaker Matt Huffman appears to be on board with this. So that suggests that if it passes the House, it might have some trouble in the Senate. But Young says he thinks Serino needs to read the final version of his bill and maybe he'll come along.
Okay. Now we'll get to my favorite pet topic here. And that is seatbelt buckled, check. Both hands on the wheel, check. Mouth guard and helmet, check. It's pothole season, and that's that season between winter and spring. You've got to be prepared. Freezing cold days followed by a taste of spring. Today it's going to be something like 52, followed by another Arctic plunge, and then repeat. It pulls patches right out of pavement. It gets water into cracks and creates all kinds of craters. I smashed one on the ramp to the Innerbelt eastbound on I-90 a month or so ago. It felt like I hit a truck. And a new tire later and $300, I'm finally done with that. There's a process I found out about how you complain about that. In that case, it would be ODOT, which then sends you to the Ohio Court of Claims, which then to me became so burdensome, I don't think I've finished that yet. But Anna, let's talk a little bit about potholes. They're not only annoying, but they're expensive and they're dangerous.
Yeah, no kidding. In Akron, there's one on North Street when I'm going home, and actually, no, it's not one. There's a line of them right now, and I have swerved to miss them every single time, which is also part of the danger that ODOT is talking about. So it's not just you're popping a tire or something like that, but sometimes people swerve and can cause accidents. But yes, as you mentioned, it's also expensive. Can I get away with saying AAA, or do I have to say the American Automobile Association?
Well, you just did.
Wait,
Okay.
and you said ODOT without...
Yeah, what's ODOT,
Because
Mike?
I was going to come back to that later and say the Ohio Department of Transportation.
Okay. All
Okay,
right.
I'm
Well,
very
Can you
embarrassed
tell
now.
he's our boss that
yes, if
needles us for
anyone-
this stuff?
If anyone out there is listening to the roundtable for the very first time, Mike hates acronyms.
Yes, and I hate initials and everything else because I
Yes.
think we should all understand what each other is talking about.
Yes, so that's why I made that joke.
Very good.
So
Thank you.
AAA, the American Automobile Association, estimates that potholes cost drivers $3 billion a year total in repairs. The average is $406 in repairs, so a little bit more than what you
Yeah.
had to pay there, Mike. So yes, they can be dangerous. They're super annoying. Swerving, you can cause a crash or disable a vehicle. But as you mentioned, drivers do have some recourse. If you see a pothole on a road that ODOT maintains, so, state route, highways, things like that, you can call their office and report it. You also, I found, if you feel that the pothole was made aware of and there was negligence and it was not fixed, you can actually submit a claim through ODOT as well. And they can figure out, you can try to get reimbursement for that.
Right, and it sends you, as I mentioned, to the Ohio Court of Claims, and then you've got to go through that process, and I'm sure it's worthwhile if you've got the wherewithal and time to do it.
Right.
I'm probably one of those many people that halfway through the process says, I'll get back to this later. Susan in Willowick says, I hit a pothole on East 152nd Street, had to get a new tire, as did I. She said, Cleveland has a lengthy process to get any reimbursement, so there's each individual city has its own process as well.
And you can also call, whatever municipality the road is in. If you see one that's really egregious, you should call that municipality to alert them and say, hey, get on out there to fix it.
So let's talk about how Akron is fixing it. So a
Yes.
lot of these places, if you'll see, there's crews that go out, they throw cold patch in the hole, which will fill it, but probably is going to pop out in a matter of months. And so eventually a more permanent fix has to happen. In Akron, and it's also a lot of manpower. In Akron, they've got a $300,000 truck now where you can sit behind the wheel, press a couple of buttons, use a joystick, and fill these potholes with a much more durable filling.
Yes, it's called the Durapatcher. And what the city is really excited about is it's one person instead of those multiple people in a crew that have to go out there. So it saves, that kind of resource there. And as you mentioned, they kind of operate it. This hose comes out and first it sprays in to clean out the pothole, and then it fills it with the material, and then it applies that dry patch or the dry stone on top. And it takes under 2 minutes apparently, which the old way was about 5 minutes, so it's saving time. It also is apparently safer because the person doesn't have to leave the truck. The
Right.
truck just does it for them instead of, a crew out there that could get hit by an oncoming vehicle.
Jerry sends us an email. He says, while the idea of a 10-minute patch and a truck doing that is pretty cool, maybe we could consider using higher quality materials to build roads in the first place. Just a thought. And that's true. When you look at these asphalt roads compared to, old school roads in Europe that never get a pothole, maybe they might not, some of them may not have the same weather conditions we have too. But the idea of road construction is an important one too. And certainly one you'll think about while you're limping your car back to the office after hitting a pothole and then calling the American Automobile Association to pick up your car and bring it to the dealership.
Do you guys remember, this is super random, but do you guys remember Brady Lake? It was a small village outside of Kent. When I was a student at Kent, this story really is what pushed me to get into local news. Brady Lake dissolved the village because they didn't have enough money to fix the potholes.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show you how important they are. And I did almost pop a tire several times driving out there.
And it's interesting because municipalities, of course, are watching every dollar as they
Yep.
should, but that sometimes tends to using this cheaper material, which then you have to replace, and
Exactly.
it's a mess.
Yeah, residents were going out there and filling the potholes themselves with random stuff that they could find.
Anybody who's ever served on a city council or run for mayor knows that it's garbage and potholes.
And speeding. In Akron, at least.
We'll add that as well.
That's what they talk about.
I guess I'm in trouble. All right. We're going to take a quick break right now. When we get back, let's talk taxes. Do you pay where you live and where you work? What if your city sought to reduce the reciprocity credit you might receive? A new bill would put that to a vote of the people. This is the Sound of Ideas Reporters Roundtable, and I'm Mike McIntyre, and we will be right back. You are back with the Sound of Ideas Reporters Roundtable from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Mike McIntyre with Anna Huntsman and Glenn Forbes from IdeaStream, and State House News Bureau Chief Karen Kassler as well. Check out our weekly IdeaStream news quiz at ideastream.org/quiz. Don't check it out on your phone while you're driving because you got to look for all those potholes. By the way, we talked potholes today and Burke Lakefront Airport. I don't know how we have time to talk about anything else because usually when you bring those topics up, that's what everyone wants to keep talking about.
It's a Cleveland tradition, right?
It is.
Burke Lakefront Airport and potholes.
Exactly. And Stephen sent us an email saying, speaking of better quality roads, in my experience, concrete is superior to asphalt. So now we can have an hour-long conversation about how to build roads because that's what we talk about here in this town.
Let's open up the phone lines no, I'm kidding.
Unfortunately, no phone lines on Friday, but we'll certainly be talking about that at the community tour, and we're going to set that up with a conversation next week as well, and you'll have a chance to call in and talk about that. Meanwhile, though, let's talk about another thing everyone likes to complain about, and that is taxes. If you live in one city but work in another, chances are you're paying income taxes to both places. You may get a credit from your home city reducing the burden or even eliminating the extra tax. Ohio is one of just 11 states that allow workers to be taxed in this way. A new House bill would make it harder for cities to reduce or eliminate the credits that some taxpayers receive. It would require instead a vote of the residents. So some cities might give you a reciprocity and say, if you're paying 3% to one city, we'll give you a 2% credit, so you have to pay another percent to us, raising your bill to 4%, but it could have been higher. If they said, hey, we want to reduce that because we want to collect all those taxes, it would say that the voters get to decide. So let's first lay this out in Ohio, how you can be taxed where you live and where you work. I kind of put a little bit of that together,
Yeah.
Glenn, but how does that work?
Yeah, a lot of numbers here. As you mentioned, Ohio, one of 11 states. So in the vast minority, I know that's an oxymoron, but just one of 11 states to allow this. 45% of municipalities, so we're talking cities, towns, and villages, 45% do not charge an individual more for working elsewhere. Of course, that leaves 55% that do. 29% of municipalities offer no credit, 26 offer partial credit. These numbers coming from the Ohio Legislative Service Commission. So that means in about 55% of these incorporated areas, if you live and work in different places, you can pay, or you are essentially taxed. You can pay income taxes to both municipalities where you work and where you live. So about 55% of those incorporated areas in Ohio.
So, Karen, House Bill 503 passed last week, actually this week. What does it do?
Well, like you said, it would require that voters decide if a community wants to lower that credit. So it would have to go to the ballot, and voters would have to agree that they'd essentially pay more tax, that their credit on the taxes they're paying to the other community, that credit is lowered. So the idea is to give voters a say in this. And I should say, first of all, that this is just past the House, so it's in the process right now. It has not happened. And it would not be retroactive. So it only would apply to taxes going forward. So it's not going to eliminate the taxes. It doesn't do anything with regard to eliminating that you're paying taxes in your local where you live and also where you work. That will still stay.
Yeah, this doesn't reduce anything. This is basically playing defense. It's not saying I'm going to get a break. It's saying if they want to take away the break I already have, then the public gets a chance to weigh in on that first.
Exactly. And, you know, it was interesting to hear House Speaker Matt Huffman after this passed, going after everybody's good friend Rita, the Regional Income Tax Agency.
Lovely Rita.
Oh, yes. Saying that he just felt like this is an outside firm that just basically is trying to get more income. He likened it to a police officer giving out 50 tickets a day. You know, he says he wants to curb abuses. But Rita, of course, said they are hired by communities to collect taxes, and they were very neutral in their statement in response.
I thought Lovely Rita was a meter maid. You're saying she's a tax collector?
For some people, yeah.
My friends and I have joked about that before.
I was going to say, how many jokes have been made
yeah.
about paying Rita?
Yeah.
Right?
She never lets you forget.
Yes.
She always comes after you, is what we say.
I used to work for a guy who said, I don't even know the broad. Sorry.
And I think I know the name of this guy.
I do too.
I think Karen does too.
I certainly do.
The guy who liked to use that name for women often, right?
Yes. May God rest his soul.
Yes. Republicans say the bill protects Ohioans from being overtaxed. Some Democrats, though, Karen, say that's not the case. Although this was a 65-35 bill. Was that all party line?
That's mostly party line, yeah. And so, you know, Democrats have long worried about the impact of changing income tax law on cities, because cities get a lot of their revenue from income taxes, which of course can pay for law enforcement and things like that. So they're concerned about that. And one of the Democrats who spoke on the floor, Representative Elgin Rogers, said there's no evidence of any abuses, and this is a solution in search of a problem.
Marvin says, I understand the need for municipalities to have revenue, but they should collect taxes from just the businesses themselves and not from every employee. That's his point of view. And Steve sent a note in saying he moved to Ohio and is confused by this whole thing about all of these taxes going this place and that. You're not the only one. There's potential impact of funding, just like when we're talking about eliminating the property tax, because there's a move to do that statewide, a grassroots move. We're hearing from municipalities that if that happens, that's going to be big trouble. But we're also hearing from them that if you take away this ability to reduce the reciprocity credits, that could also hurt municipalities.
Yeah, absolutely. It would affect how much money that they are permitted to take in. And so, yeah, the real concern for local governments has been all along, as the local government fund was shrunk under former Governor John Kasich, then, you know, you started to see a little bit more taxing at local communities. And so they're very concerned about the possibility that if this were to happen, I mean, what voters are going to say, yes, go ahead and lower the reciprocity credit so I can pay more taxes.
That's going to be that's a 99 to 1% vote, it sounds like, which never happens. And Glenn, I mentioned the property taxes, and all of this is happening because there's response by the lawmakers to a lot of outcry from the public about taxes in general, property taxes being one of them. I was struck by a meeting in Geauga County in Bainbridge where they wanted to talk about taxes and immediately filled the forum. The public is eager to get information and to talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, typically when you talk about like the minutia of taxes and the tax code, people your eyes kind of glaze over. But when you-
Inside millage, outside millage.
Right. But when you talk about something as a major move like eliminating a property tax, and that starts to get some traction, people want to know what's going on. People want to know, what the answers are, what the possibilities are. So as you mentioned, a sold-out crowd at Bainbridge Library in Geauga County. There was also an online wait list, but a couple of interesting comments from that. We've heard Governor DeWine talk about if the property tax were to be eliminated, you're talking about upwards of 20% sales tax. Chuck Walters, the Geauga County auditor, he agrees. He says basically you're going to have to charge 20% sales tax. Now, some people are in favor of that. Some people say, hey, that's a user tax. That's the fairest way to do it. Others, not so much. Again, Chuck Walter, Geauga County Auditor, says the library is primarily, where this forum was, the library is primarily surviving on property tax. He says townships, more than 90% of their revenue is property tax. And he also cited that the issue with raising the sales tax that much, if you live near one of the bordering states, be it Michigan, Indiana, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, why wouldn't you just go across the border, right? Or
Right.
if you're visiting, like for me,
For your
I don't-
purchases, yeah.
I don't live near one of those borders, but if I'm visiting family in Toledo, maybe I would go up to Michigan. I mean, who knows? So there's some interesting opinions and interesting arguments on both sides. But yeah, it seems like the consensus is, and again, Chuck Walter in Geauga County says they would need to raise the sales tax from about 6% to 20%.
And when
to
you think
maintain
about
the
that,
budget.
you said some people like that idea, but think about the fact that if you make an income of $25,000 as opposed to someone that makes $60,000, and you're both paying 20%,
On
it's
your
not
sales
it's
tax,
not
yeah.
graduated down to whatever your income is in a percentage. We're all paying that. That would be devastating, you would think, for people of lower incomes.
And that's the argument against it, right? Some people again are in favor of a flat tax, or in this case, like a flat user tax.
Right.
Just tax everything, sales tax, make it equal, and all that stuff. But to your point, it'll impact some more than others.
All right. Ohio is on track to join a number of states that have banned ranked choice voting. The House this week voted on a bill that prevents local governments from using the system. Let's lay it out first, and we talked about this a little before, but if you're not familiar, Karen, how does ranked choice voting work? How does it differ from what we do now?
Well, basically, if you have multiple candidates, 3 or more candidates, you rank them in order of preference. So you don't vote for just one. You basically say, here's my first choice, here's my second choice, here's my third choice, et cetera. And there are communities in Ohio that are considering going to it. Ohio used to do it. I mean, communities in Ohio did back last century, but you got some communities now that are considering it. Lakewood is one of them. And Republican and some Democratic lawmakers wanted to get ahead of that by saying, nope, no community in the state should be able to use ranked choice voting. We're going to vote for one candidate in every election, not rank multiple ones.
What this would seem to do would be to move us away from the polar sides that you've had. On one side, a left candidate, a right candidate, everyone who believes in that votes for it, and that's the two candidates then you have to choose from. This might instead say, well, I align with this candidate a little bit better, and people drop off as time goes on. You end up getting the main candidate. What is the problem that people at the State House have with that process?
Well, there was a study that was done by the University of Minnesota that was cited on the House floor that said that ranked choice voting doesn't do those things. It doesn't reduce political polarization. It doesn't reduce negative ad campaigning. Now, the supporters of ranked choice voting will say that study is very flawed and it's often been used in this way. But basically, the folks who are against ranked choice voting say it's complicated. Voting machines would have to be updated. Some wouldn't be able to be updated. It could delay results, and it can be confusing to voters. But the supporters say basically what you just did, that it offers people a choice, especially if they have two candidates they don't like. You get a choice of which one that you would prefer rather than the other.
Right.
And it result in candidates who have stronger support overall when they come to voters again.
And we have done this in Ohio before. It's been done in Cincinnati. But the idea is it should be a local decision. That's one of the pushbacks against this as well. The state is trying to dictate to counties and local municipalities how they should conduct their elections.
Yeah, just like with the story we just talked about with the reciprocity credit. You've got people at the State House who say, hey, local control and home rule should be the option here, that local communities should get to decide what they want to do, not the state telling them what to do. And so It's an interesting debate. I know a lot of people, especially on the progressive side, have really wanted to see ranked choice voting, but it's not going to happen in Ohio if this goes back to the Senate for a small change and then goes to Governor Mike DeWine. It passed with a veto-proof majority in both the House and Senate, so even if he did veto it, it's probably going to go forward.
All right, Connie is suspicious. He sends an email saying, what are legislators afraid of? All right, moving on. We got more details this week about how the Akron School District will slash $11 million from its budget this year, with more to come after the superintendent briefed the Board of Education this week. Anna, what did the superintendent, Mary Outley, what did she say?
As you mentioned, this has been a long time coming. They've been trying to cut for several years now. Mary Outley says that $58 million in cuts is needed over the next 3 years, and this is all about being responsible, making tough decisions, but still keeping the integrity of the classroom. So about $6.4 million of that is going to come from staffing reductions, 16 administrators, 13 teachers who work in the college and career academies, and then just some basic cutting back on operational cuts by $4.2 million across most departmental budgets.
Okay. And Glenn, let's switch over to Cleveland. It's also facing cuts, massive reorganization. The school choice portal closes today. And let's talk about what that even is. Many families have not taken part in that. Not many students have used this portal. What is it, and what happens after today?
Yeah, so IdeaStream's Connor Morris reporting on this. He says as of Wednesday, only about half of families have used this portal, and essentially what it is like you get your preference in for what school you would like to go to next year. Obviously taking on increased importance with this consolidation plan that calls for 29 fewer schools, 18 buildings set to close in the fall of this year, next school year. And what we've heard for months is the concern is really about families who have children with disabilities. They're not able to find the same kind of services that they had at their previous school if their school is closing in this consolidation plan. And again, as of Wednesday, Connor Morris reporting only about half of the families have used this portal, and deadlines spur action, so you would expect that to go up a little bit. But the concern is, are these families looking at other options? Are we looking at a big drop in enrollment because of this consolidation plan? We don't know the answer to that yet, and families can still sign up after today, which is the deadline to use the portal, but they're not guaranteed their preferred spot.
Got it. The courts are still deciding whether Ohio can fund sports facilities, including the new Brown Stadium, from the state's unclaimed funds account. But since the legislature voted to create a pool to fund not only the Brown Stadium but others, the line is already out the door with sports teams seeking cash. Karen, we talked about the Cavs and the Guardians last week, but there are a ton more requests, and some are for some pretty huge money.
Yeah, and I have to pat myself on the back a little bit on this because I broke the story about the
Iron
numbers.
Maiden.
The numbers. I mean, I've been working with. I've been asking the Office of Budget and Management to give me not only the list of the sports operations that applied, but also the dollar figures, how much they applied for. It's a $400 million fund, which is part of that $1 billion fund that would be funded with unclaimed funds. That transfer has not happened because of a court battle over that, but the expectation, I guess, is that it's going to be funded. And so $600 million of that goes to the Browns for their Dome Stadium project in Brook Park. And then the other $400 million, that's up for grabs for sports operations. 22 of them, 21 in Ohio and 1 in Massachusetts actually applied.
Massachusetts?
And, yeah, I know. It's Springfield, Massachusetts. It's a youth development group.
Did they think we'd think it was Springfield, Ohio?
I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that, because I think that probably violates at least the spirit of what this fund was trying to do. But the biggest ask, overwhelmingly, was Hamilton County for Paycor Stadium for the Cincinnati Bengals, $234 million, which is more than half of the $400 million fund. And by the way, that is 25% of their overall renovation cost, because you could not ask for more than 25%. But then the whole list, I mean, it's basically all of the pro sports teams in Ohio, FC Cincinnati, the Blue Jackets in Columbus, the Guardians and Cavaliers, Toledo's pre-professional soccer league. You've got minor league baseball teams like the Clippers and the Akron Rubber Ducks and the Toledo Mud Hens and the Dayton Dragons. So it's a long list. You did have two very small ones, though, a parkour business in Maumee and a youth baseball team in Sandusky asked for only $10,000.
Whenever you see me step off a curb, that's parkour.
Yeah.
Glenn, is your CYO basketball team looking for money for a venue?
I think we probably should. I mean, at this point, but this was the logical conclusion, right? I mean, once the Browns said, "Hey, we want this money," and you put up the unclaimed funds, you knew everybody, not just the major professional sports teams, but everybody was going to line up for this. Once they set that precedent, here they come.
All right.
And that's why the fund was created. I mean, Governor Mike DeWine had wanted to create it through a tax on sports gambling operators, and then lawmakers wanted to create the fund, but they didn't want to tax sports gambling operators, so that's why they went to the unclaimed funds. But again, that's still in a court battle, so it's unclear what's going to happen to that.
And this whole thing was created because of the Browns facility, and we said it's getting a lion's share of that fund. Meanwhile, there's still a fight about, or had been a fight about the Browns facility. A judge, though, this week dismissed a lawsuit filed by former Cleveland Mayor and Congressman Dennis Kucinich seeking to prevent the Browns from leaving downtown for Brook Park. He claimed the move violated terms of the city's lease. And Glenn, essentially the judge said this is already settled.
Yeah, pretty much. Once the Haslam ownership group and Mayor Justin Bibbs struck the deal, and council gave its blessing, more or less, about $100 million as an exit fee, you could call it. Judge Holly Gallagher said, well, once that deal was made, the issues raised by this lawsuit from former Mayor Dennis Kucinich are now moot. And Kucinich said they are considering an appeal, but where does that really go?
He doesn't give up easily. If you've
No, he
ever
does
seen him
not.
run for president, if you saw the Muni Light issue, if you saw the railroad tracks issue with Conrail and Norfolk Southern, Kucinich hangs in there. We'll see if this one continues as well.
Yep, it could possible on appeal. We'll see.
State lawmakers are trying to put together a multi-billion-dollar capital infrastructure bill on a tight deadline after getting the okay from Republican House Speaker Matt Huffman this month to proceed. The plan uses state bond money, loans, to pay for projects for universities, parks, and cities. Requests are due by March 12th. Karen, why is this getting such a late start in the game? They could have done this months ago.
Well, it was actually Speaker Matt Huffman who had raised concerns about whether the state could afford to do a capital bill this time, because the state is on the hook for about $1 billion in fines or fees from a Supreme Court ruling against the state filed by nursing homes. So that's still out there. He had suggested that maybe the state couldn't go ahead and afford to do a capital bill, but Governor Mike DeWine and Senate President Ron McCauley really pushed for this, and so it's happening. The speaker says that right now they're on a deadline to try to get all their local requests done by next month, and then hopefully pass the capital budget in May or June. It gives them all something to campaign on, because all those local projects that are in there, and they're all campaigning. The entire House and half the Senate is up for re-election. So it's that's where we are.
I wonder if there's a youth sports facility in Springfield that will look for some of that capital money.
I know in previous capital budgets, especially when we had Matt Huffman as Speaker, or as Senate President, and Bob Cupp as Speaker of the House, they're both from Lima, and Lima did really well in that one capital
Yeah,
budget.
but I was talking about Springfield, Massachusetts, though.
Well, yeah, true.
Right. All right. It's been a year since Medina County opened its first dedicated shelter for people experiencing homelessness. Let's get a check-in now on how that's going. Anna, people have been using it?
200 people have been served over the past year, according to the folks there. And this place is called Next Step Up. And they have 27 beds, 2 cribs, and a room for dogs and cats. So that's kind of the key here. A lot of times with folks, if you have a pet, which is very important to a lot of people who are living outside or experiencing homelessness, you can't often take your pet into these different shelters. And so that actually deters people. So that's one unique component here. But, Medina, Wayne, other rural counties have been experiencing an uptick in homelessness over the past few years. And the challenge there that I found in my previous reporting is they're not as equipped to handle it as some of the major cities, because this has been going on for years. So they've got the buildings, they've got the resources there, whereas rural counties are like, we're dealing with this for the first time. So finding a space like what they were able to find in Medina is crucial and not often the case.
And it's really important that we report on these kinds of issues. But I think often people get in their mind, oh, yeah, it's a Cleveland problem or an Akron problem.
Right.
But it can be a Medina problem and any community problem.
With the uptick in, or I guess I should say the lack of affordable housing, the uptick in costs, the rising costs over the past few years. People are saying this is everywhere now. It is just so much harder for folks to find affordable housing and stay there. And so, as I mentioned, this is increasing in rural counties too. So it's very exciting to see that this place served that many people over the past year.
Well, speaking of affordable housing, it's an issue in many Northeast Ohio cities, including Akron. And last night, Akron chose 65 people to focus on housing to come up with potential solutions. It's called a civic assembly. And it was kind of a bizarre night last night, kind of like going to play
fun.
bingo and a lottery at the same time.
Yeah.
Tell me what happened there.
Look, Mike, if I'm going to have to work late the night before the roundtable,
Yeah.
this is the assignment I want every time because boy, was it a delight. So they basically turned House 330, which is an event venue in Akron, they turned it into this lottery game show. So there were balloons and lights. They had a little jazz band that every time someone would come up to do a speech, they'd play little walk-on music for them. It was adorable. Oh my gosh, it was so fun. So yes, this is what they did. So they got 584 Akron residents to sign up to be in this lottery. And if you get picked, you're committing to this 10-week session of a civic assembly. So you're researching housing topics, and then by the end, you're proposing solutions. And the point is to work together with your neighbors. So it was a demographic sample of Akron. So it's people who have a different income level than you, political affiliation than you, look different than you, learning to work together and have these conversations about what do we all actually want to get behind. And then they're going to present these solutions to the mayor and city council, who have also committed to implementing these, and try to create change in the city. So they broke it down into your different lottery group, which was picked, by the way, of little kids with numbered rubber ducks.
Aww.
They closed their eyes and showed it out of the bowl. And then there was one little girl, Anaya, she rolled the dice to pick the final lottery group, which was the 65 people who were picked.
And so they're going to come up with ideas. Interestingly, you said the mayor said we're going to implement in some way
In some
those
way,
ideas.
yeah.
It's a little bit different than the people's budget that we heard here in Cleveland, where it's like we're going to get money and determine how that's going to go. It's kind of the same idea of civic involvement, but without the cash and without the ability to create the legislation and the ordinances, but buy-in from the city.
There is not only buy-in from the actual legislators, but there's several different committees of people who are already working in this housing space or in the government space, and so they know how to take it from an idea to implementation. And there are already so many studies sitting on shelves about what could be done to fix the housing issues in Akron. So they're going to be looking at those and saying, hey, this idea is actually something we can do today or tomorrow, you know? And then there's the other ones that are going to take a little bit more time and money. So the point is about working together, and it's this engaging in democracy and then having buy-in from the elected officials.
Awesome. All right, we're going to take a quick break right now. Stay tuned for the answer to this question. Coffin, cremation, or compost? Which would you prefer when you die? This is the Sound of Ideas Reporters Roundtable. I'm Mike McIntyre, and we will be right back. You are back with the Sound of Ideas Reporters Roundtable. You got me, Mike McIntyre. You got Karen Kassler, Glenn Forbes, and Anna Huntsman. And of course, you're with us as well. Note from John, who sends an email. He says, I'm a college student getting ready to graduate. And if our lawmakers don't want to spend a little bit of money to make our voting better and make someone like me, who doesn't own property, pay 13% more sales tax on every single thing I buy, why would I even want to stay here? And that's John's point of view. Something certainly I'm sure legislators are looking at as well. Fancy coffin, plain box, cremation, or possibly a new option proposed by a state legislator, natural organic reduction, back to the dirt. A new bill would allow human composting, a process that's allowed in states like Oregon and Washington. It's grown in popularity. And Karen, it's being sold here as a green option for burial. Any response to this bill by the legislature?
Well, it was proposed by Senator Bill Blessing, who's a fairly moderate Republican out of the Cincinnati area. And he says that basically it allows people to become a bag of dirt, essentially. And so it's allowed in Oregon and Washington. It's gaining in popularity, he says. So it's seen as a more green option for burial or for disposal of remains rather than cremation or burial.
You guys have preferences here? Glenn? Bag of
Well,
dirt?
you're closer than me. Just kidding, Glenn.
Wow.
Just kidding, Glenn. So you, that was
Okay,
just
we're
a
going
joke.
to leave it there. Forget it.
Just kidding.
If the 2024 solar eclipse turned you into a sky gazer, get ready for Saturday's sunset just after dusk. Mercury, Venus, Neptune, Saturn, Uranus, and Jupiter will align, forming what experts call a great planetary parade. You'll need binoculars or a telescope to get a good view, and you'll need a clear view of the sky the darker the better. Two places in Ohio that have been designated dark sky communities, Geauga Observatory Park and Fry Park in Magnolia, which is south of Canton. And the best viewing time is just after sunset. Will you guys be looking up?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of a cool thing. They're all going to be in line. Literally, the planets are aligning.
Wow.
Something else great
What does
has
that
to happen.
mean?
Yeah. They're in line. You look at it. It's literally a line of planets.
Well,
but
no, when you say the planets
I
are
know, they're
aligning,
aligning
that
for,
sounds very,
well, spring training
ominous.
began, so maybe the planets are
Well,
aligning
okay.
there as well.
You know what? Maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Not ominous, but a good thing.
And speaking of baseball, after 26 years in the minors, a key contributor to the Akron Rubber Ducks is going to the big leagues. It's not a player. President and General Manager Jim Fander, a Hoban grad and Fairlawn resident, will take a senior front office job with the Tampa Bay Rays. It's kind of a big deal. And Anna, I don't know if this was really unexpected. The Rays are owned by Ken Babby.
Yeah.
He used to own the Rubber Ducks until he sold them and he also owned the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. I love these names.
I know, me too.
To take over the Tampa Bay Rays,
Yep.
but he's hired now his top guy in Akron.
Yeah, I was in Tampa over the weekend, and Fander was on my flight home. So I was like, I wonder what's going on. And then this came out, and yeah, like you said, it wasn't a huge surprise because Ken Babby's already down there. This is a great promotion for him. He's done a lot of great work with the Rubber Ducks. You know, so many improvements. Fabulous teams in 2021, 2024. The name change from the Arrows, he oversaw that.
Yeah,
so
a lot of work that he
yeah,
had done.
congrats to him.
And what's interesting is Ken Babby, who moved there, said, I had a lot of great people in Akron, a lot of great people in Jacksonville, and then there's a company that was formed that oversaw all of that, and some great people that worked there too. All of them are also working there. Fander's going to go work with a lot
Yeah.
of people he's already worked with.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And like I said, it's a great promotion.
Some very interesting proposals for a new stadium in Tampa. The former Rubber Ducks employees will be busy. If you remember, the roof was damaged in the hurricane.
Right,
And there's
right.
nothing official, but some interesting renderings for a new stadium in
got
Tampa.
a lot
And
to work
realize that being an executive in a sports team isn't just about can we get wins on the field. It's about is it a family environment
Yeah.
and how do we get people through the door and what are our promotions and all of those types of things. There's a whole lot of business to run there, and Mr. Fander
The
is going to
Rubber
be part
Ducks
of that.
won a lot of awards for their promotions and whatnot under Fander, so that makes total sense.
And quickly, the Prospector Baseball Group, which is the group that bought it from Ken Babby, they say that there's going to be a replacement. They're going to do it's not an in-house thing necessarily.
Yeah,
it's
they're
going
doing
to be
a wide
search.
search. Yep.
Okay, fair enough. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame list of nominees was released on Wednesday. You may have heard Kabir Bhatia talking about it yesterday on The Sound of Ideas. It's a diverse list. Artists from the 80s and 90s are well represented, and some legends, too. This year's list of nominees is, I'll lay it out. I'm going to get your guys' thoughts on it. The Black Crowes, Jeff Buckley, Mariah Carey, Phil Collins, Melissa Etheridge, Lauryn Hill, Billy Idol, In Excess, Iron Maiden, Joy Division, New Order, New Edition, Oasis, Pink, Sade, Shakira, Luther Vandross, and the Wu-Tang Clan. So you want them all in, Glenn?
Wu-Tang Forever. That's
Yeah,
number one.
He just gave us the symbol.
I gave the W. Phil Collins as a solo artist, absolutely deserving. My favorites, probably Oasis, love Oasis, and the Black Crowes.
Okay.
I'm all in for Luther.
You're all in for Luther,
All in
yeah.
for Luther,
He's
yep.
totally smooth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love his music so much.
And how about you, Karen? Who are we going for?
I agree on Phil Collins. I agree on NXS and Joy Division, New Order. Absolutely. So yeah, this is an interesting class. It really is.
I think Melissa Etheridge and Lauryn Hill are not getting enough love in this conversation.
Oh, yeah,
I
you're
gotta
right.
bring them up too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a great list. How can we pick?
And now when I hear Phil Collins, and his obviously is his big song, I Can Feel It in the Air Tonight, I think of Mike Tyson waiting for that drum solo in The Hangover. I think that was the movie that it
You
was
know what
in.
I think of, and it makes me sad? Baker Mayfield. That was,
really?
That was Baker's kind of warm-up, pump-up song, and Baker, we miss you.
I think of his dance moves. Phil Collins, have you ever seen his dance moves
I've
back in
never
the
seen
day?
his dance
Oh, they're dorky and fun.
He looks like a high school math teacher.
Yeah,
so you
exactly.
know.
I was gonna say that. Yeah,
And
it's
don't
like a high
forget,
school
he-
math teacher dancing.
Don't forget, he was in Genesis. He
Yes.
Yeah.
He's
already
succeeded
in.
Peter
Yeah.
Gabriel there as well.
Yeah, if Peter Gabriel's in twice, Phil Collins should be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and if you all have opinions on that, shoot me an email, soi@ideastream.org. We'll love to hear what your thoughts are on the Rock Hall. The actual class of inductees will be announced in April. The induction ceremony is going to be in Cleveland this fall. My thanks go out to you, Anna Huntsman, and to you, Glenn Forbes of IdeaStream Public Media, and State House News Bureau Chief Karen Kassler. Glad to have all of you with us today. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.